Huts Pass is a typical inverted profile pass with a low point in the middle at the crossing of the Kora River. Although a little difficult to find, this pass will remain one of your travel treasures once you've driven it. It traverses unspoilt wild coast scenery through a remote part of the old Transkei, yet there is life in abundance as the locals go about their daily chores and livestock make themselves comfortable on the road. There are many passes similar to this one, yet each one has its own special charm. At 8.5 kilometers, it's a substantial pass and you'll experience an altitude variance of 247 meters via 48 bends, corners and curves, and of those, 6 are greater than 90 degrees, but there are no hairpin bends. Nearby Mazeppa Bay and its village were named after the Mazeppa ship that ran aground here in 1892. Then, in the Second World War, an aircraft crashed into the rocky beach in a failed attempt at an emergency landing. This site, now known as 1 Mile Rocks, is an important tourist attraction. Mazeppa Bay is best known for its excellent fishing. There's a wide variety of game fish and sharks to be caught here. The biggest catch ever recorded was a great white shark weighing an incredible 791 kilograms. Other species that are frequently caught in these waters include garrick and cob, which are both delicious eating fish. This part of the wild coast is home to some spectacular beaches. The most popular of these is Mazeppa Bay First Beach. From here you can walk over a high suspension bridge 100 meters from the ocean below to reach Mazeppa Bay's famous island. The other 2 main beaches lie to the south of the lagoon and are ideal for long walks and collecting shells. The waters of the wild coast are absolutely beautiful for a number of reasons. They are warm, unspoilt, and as their name implies, wild. So although the conditions can be perfect for swimming, surfing and stand-up paddling, it's important that you're always aware of the currents and possible rip tides. The pass starts on a hillside dotted with huts. This is the Angoma Village. Here time has stood still for 200 years with hardly any sign of modern civilization. Some of the traditional mud and thatch huts have given way to similar designs, now built from air bricks and IBR roof sheeting. Like most of the Eastern Cape, livestock will almost always be encountered on this road. The best policy when driving here is to expect it at all times. That way there'll be no nasty surprises. The road begins dropping at a gentle gradient at first, then steepens progressively as the lip of the Kora River gorge is reached. Unfortunately, the dense bush obscures much of the views. A double S-bend with some sharp corners is followed by a long and wide right-hand curve which follows the shape of the mountain forming the northern bank of the gorge. The gradient gets steep here, up to 1 in 7, and in wet weather, non-4-wheel drive vehicles could find themselves in all sorts of trouble. Once through the big right-hand curve, the road follows the lip of the gorge about 30 meters above the river. At the 2-kilometer point, there's a very sharp right-hand corner of 90 degrees. At the apex of this bend, there's a widening in the road just big enough for 2 vehicles. Here you can pull over and get some good views of the gorge and its triple river system. Remember to engage your handbrake fully, switch off your engine, and leave your car in gear. Next up is a U-shaped bend of 180 degrees, which allows the road to align itself at 90 degrees to the river. The radius is not particularly tight, but the surface can get rutted here after rain, so do pay attention. Once through this bend, the surface becomes tarred, and at this point you have an interesting geographical feature not seen on any other pass in South Africa. There are 3 separate bridges, each separated by a distance of about 100 meters. The first river is the Ngakeni, the middle one is the Kora, and the last one is the Ntiaba. The 2 smaller rivers form confluences with the Kora River just a little further downstream. For some unknown reason, cattle love to spend time around these bridges, as can be attested by the large volumes of cow dung on the roadway. These bridges are reached at the 2.2 kilometer mark, which is only about a quarter of the way along the pass. The ascent up the southern side is much longer, but also not as steep and dramatic. The road cleverly follows a long finger of the hill, forming a barrier on the southern side of the gorge, and then loops around its southern side in a very wide right-hand bend, steadily gaining altitude. In Xhosa culture, the rules of inheritance operated only within the immediate family. The firstborn son of the great wife, highest ranked wife inherited his father's livestock. Where polygamy was practiced, all the firstborn sons of a man's wife stood to inherit a share of his livestock from which they would build their own herds. Historically, land was allocated through the political authorities, in other words, the chief in council, and not on the basis of descent groups. Even in cases of wider cooperation between homesteads, for example, the ad hoc work parties which are organized to assist in planting, weeding and harvesting, the descent is less important than the geographical proximity. The agnatic group, in other words related through the male line, consists of a cluster of agnatically related household heads and their offspring living in a particular area. Since these men are the descendants of a common great-grandfather, they are very conscious of the group to which they belong. This cluster can vary from 2 to 3 to about 20 household heads. Land and stock is not owned communally by members of the cluster, but is rather held by the individual Xhosa homesteads within the cluster. These groups have two important but limited functions. Firstly, to settle disputes between members of the group, and secondly, to constitute the congregation of the ancestor cult. The Xhosa people speak their own Bantu language, isiXhosa, which bears traces of similarity with the dialect of the Zulus and the Swazis. The language is rich in verbosity and expressions, with proverbs and verses in popular use. This is reflected in their naming system, so you can expect to come across names that reveal either the social standing of the person or the way she is regarded in the community, like Nomsa, Mother of Kindness. Even though the Xhosa literature was established in early 19th century, the tradition of oral history is very strong. Folklore meshes with historical accounts, and stories of animal characters or legends of tribal warriors are recounted in dramatic ways. The Xhosa tradition of conveying historical events through folklore and songs has kept the cultural fabric strong and thriving. With the aggressive evangelism of Christian missionaries, much of the native traditions and cultural beliefs are no more. However, they still stick to their rites of passage rituals even while practicing Christianity. They have also retained the rich cultural values associated with any indigenous community that holds nature in great regard. Respect for elders, hospitality and community spirit are an important part of the culture. The traditional system is patriarchal, with the men considered as the bread earners and protectors of the family. This is mirrored in their everyday practices, where food habits and cultural events portray the importance of male members of the societal hierarchy. Don't be surprised to see the good meat portions being served to the young virile males exclusively. Dances and rituals capture this male role, while the dance movements by women emphasize their traditional role of the hearth. The attire of the men, particularly the beadwork and cloth used, portray the role of the man in the community. At the 3.7 kilometer point, the road levels off somewhat, then commences a long and serpentine-like route up the spine of the ridge, where it passes through the village of Mapondweni. The road then twists and turns whilst undulating past countless huts. You need to be wide awake through this village and expect to find pedestrians, children, cattle, pigs, goats and chickens for several kilometers.